5 men are lying in the mud 3 feet from a North Vietnamese trail. It is after midnight. They have been motionless for 6 hours. Through the dark, they can hear boots, dozens of them, passing close enough that the lead NVA soldier's sandal brushes the toe of the point man's jungle boot. Nobody breathes. Nobody moves. The point man can smell NVA tobacco on the air, a specific acrid scent that American cigarettes don't produce. He can hear the quiet clink of an AK-47 sling against a canteen. He can feel the vibration of footsteps through the ground beneath his chest. The NVA column passes. 30 men, maybe 40. They never see the 5 Americans lying in the vegetation beside them. The Americans don't fire. They don't move. They wait until the sound fades. Then the radio operator keys his handset twice, 2 clicks, no voice, and transmits the grid coordinates to a fire base 15 miles away. 30 minutes later, artillery erases the trail junction where the column was heading. That was the job. 5 men, no armor, no reinforcements. Days behind enemy lines in jungles so dense that the man 10 feet ahead of you was invisible. Carrying weapons designed to kill in silence. Suppressed pistols, crossbows, fighting knives. Because the sound of a single gunshot meant the difference between completing the mission and being hunted by an army. They were called LRRPs, Long-Range Reconnaissance Patrols, later Rangers. And inside the most classified program in the war, MACVSOG, they crossed borders into countries the United States wasn't officially fighting in, ran missions that the White House denied existed, and suffered a casualty rate that no other unit in American military history has matched. One of them, a sergeant named Jerry Shriver, became so effective at killing NVA officers in their own territory that Radio Hanoi put a $10,000 bounty on his head by name. His teammates called him Mad Dog. His last radio transmission during a firefight in Cambodia in 1969 was 7 words. "I've got them right where I want them, surrounded from the inside." Nobody ever heard from him again. His body was never found. He is still listed as missing in action. To understand what kind of war produced men like Jerry Shriver and what it cost them, you need to understand the jungle they operated in and the weapons they carried into it. By 1966, conventional American infantry in Vietnam was getting destroyed by an enemy it couldn't see. The NVA and Viet Cong owned the jungle at night. They ambushed platoons on trails that looked safe at dawn and were killing grounds by dusk. American artillery and air power, the most destructive in the world, were useless against an enemy that melted into the canopy before the shells arrived. General Westmoreland issued the order in July '66. Create dedicated long-range patrol units that could operate in the enemy's own terrain, find his formations before they struck, and either call and fire or kill him in place. Every brigade and division would have a LRRP platoon. The men would be volunteers, all of them. Nobody was drafted into this work. The volunteers trained at the Recondo School in Nha Trang, run by the 5th Special Forces Group. 3 weeks, 300 hours of instruction compressed into 20 days. Jungle navigation, silent movement, foreign weapons, trauma medicine with no hospital within helicopter range. The dropout rate exceeded 50% in some classes, it reached 90%. The men who graduated were typically 18 to 22 years old. Most were on their 2nd or 3rd tour because the casualty rate burned through replacements faster than the Army could produce them. A standard LRRP team was 5 or 6 men. Team leader, assistant team leader, radio operator, scout, and rear security. Many teams included a Montagnard tracker, an indigenous tribesman from the Central Highlands, whose instinct for the jungle no American could replicate. A SOG recon team was smaller and more dangerous. 2 or 3 Americans, 4 to 6 Montagnards or Nongs. Inserted by helicopter into Laos or Cambodia, countries where the United States was not legally at war, to watch the Ho Chi Minh Trail, snatch prisoners, or destroy supply caches. Their missions lasted 3 to 7 days with no resupply. Their existence was classified for 3 decades. The weapons these men carried tell you everything about the kind of war they fought. The primary rifle was the CAR-15, a shortened version of the M16 with a collapsing stock and a 10 inches barrel. Compact enough to move through vines that would snag a full-length rifle. Loud enough to announce your position to every NVA soldier within a mile. SOG teams fitted theirs with moderators that changed the acoustic signature to sound like an AK-47, buying seconds of confusion in the opening moments of a firefight. Seconds that determined who lived. For silence, they carried the Hush Puppy, a suppressed Smith & Wesson Model 39 pistol with a slide lock that prevented the action from cycling. When fired, the only sound was the click of the firing pin and the impact of the subsonic round. It was designed for one purpose: killing sentries and tracker dogs without alerting the camp behind them. Montagnard team members carried crossbows, traditional weapons, heavy draw weight, capable of penetrating a flak vest at close range. No muzzle flash, no report. A man could die 30 feet from his unit and nobody would hear it happen. And knives. Gerber Mark IIs with a wasp-waist blade designed for deep penetration. Randall Bowie's SOG-marked fighting knives built for one function: cutting throats in the dark. A veteran later described his blade with unsettling clarity. That knife was made for one purpose only: to cut throats. It remains a beautiful weapon. Every man carried 2 claymore mines for pursuit traps, 30 or more loaded magazines, grenades, C4 explosive, water, food, and medical supplies. Total pack weight, 70 to 100 pounds. They ditched their helmets and flak vests. Armor was weight. Weight was noise. Noise was death. Movement was the discipline that kept them alive. They called it the ghost walk, a method so slow it could take hours to cover a few hundred yards. Every footfall tested before weight was committed. Every branch inspected for disturbance that would tell a tracker someone had passed. The rear security man brushed their trail clean behind them. Teams urinated into their own canteens rather than on the ground because NVA tracker dogs could follow the scent of American urine for miles. They ate local food and smoked captured NVA cigarettes, so their sweat would smell like the enemy's. Some teams carried AK-47s on their point man sling, so he would look from a distance like a North Vietnamese soldier. When a team needed to watch a section of the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they would lie in a concealed position for 72 hours or more, motionless, silent, cataloging every truck, every porter, every unit that passed. The intelligence they transmitted guided billions of dollars in airstrikes. 5 men with a radio could direct more destruction than a battalion of infantry, and the enemy knew it. By 1968, the NVA had created dedicated counter-recon units, specialized tracker companies, whose sole mission was to find and destroy American teams. They positioned radio-equipped watchers along likely helicopter insertion corridors. They placed scouts in trees overlooking landing zones. They trained dogs to follow American scent through triple canopy jungle. When a team was spotted, the trackers swept in. 10-man squads moving fast through terrain they knew better than any American ever would. Radio Hanoi broadcast the names of specific SOG operators and offered bounties for their dog tags. The NVA didn't see these teams as scouts. They saw them as the single greatest threat to the logistics network that kept the war going. A captured NVA officer told his interrogators, "SOG's Green Berets effectively attacked and weakened our forces and hurt our morale." The result was a war within the war. Small teams of Americans hunting an army and an army hunting them back. The casualty rate for SOG cross-border reconnaissance reached 100% over a standard tour. Every man was eventually wounded or killed. 10 medals of honor were awarded to SOG operators. It is the highest per capita rate of any unit in American military history. When it went wrong, it went completely wrong. In February 1971, Recon Team Intruder, 5 Americans and 5 Montagnards, walked into the A Shao Valley on a diversionary mission. NVA forces had prepared ambushes along the approach routes. Signal shots cracked through the canopy the moment the team moved off the landing zone. RT Intruder vanished. 2 weeks later, a follow-up team rappelled into a gorge and found 4 American bodies and 1 severed leg. The 5th body was never recovered. No negotiation. No surrender. 10 men walked into the jungle, and the jungle consumed them. They were not alone. At least 11 complete SOG teams disappeared during the war, walked into Laos or Cambodia, and never came out. 50 Green Berets remain listed as missing in action in the mountains and jungles of those countries today. Their families were told they died in accidents inside South Vietnam because admitting where they actually were in countries the United States was not officially at war with would have exposed the entire program. The cover-up lasted decades. MACVSOG's existence was denied by the White House until the records were declassified in 2001. Only then did the unit receive the Presidential Unit Citation. Only then did the families learn where their sons had actually died. On October 5, 1968, Spike Team Alabama, 9 men, was surrounded by an NVA division in the A-Shau Valley. Outnumbered thousands to one, the team leader, Lynn Black, did something that belongs in a different century of warfare. As NVA dead piled up around his position, he and his men began stacking the bodies into a wall, a physical barrier of corpses that they crouched behind to fire their weapons. They rolled over the dead to clear their fields of fire. They called air strikes on their own position because the alternative was being overrun. A North Vietnamese general later admitted his unit suffered 90% casualties in that engagement. 9 men against a division. The division broke first. The men who survived, the ones who came home after 200, 300 missions, carried something that didn't have a clinical name yet. They had spent years in a shadow world where the rules of conventional war didn't apply, where they had killed men at arm's length in the dark and felt the life leave them, where the loudest sound in the jungle was sometimes the spray of blood hitting vegetation. One veteran described a knife kill with the flat effect of a man who had processed the memory so many times it had lost its edges. I didn't have the slightest doubt or hesitation about cutting his throat. I had no bad feelings about it, either. That is not bravery the way most people understand it. That is what happens to a human being who has been trained to hunt other human beings in terrain that reduces warfare to its most primitive form. No artillery, no armor, no distance between you and the man you're killing. Just a knife, a heartbeat, in the dark. Jerry Shriver never came home. He walked into Cambodia on a mission in 1969, transmitted those 7 words, surrounded from the inside, and disappeared. The NVA never produced his body. The United States never recovered his remains. He is one of 50 Green Berets still missing in the mountains of Laos and Cambodia, in countries where America was never officially at war, on missions that didn't officially exist, fighting a shadow war that the government denied for 30 years. The jungle has grown back over the trails they walked and the positions where they lay motionless for days, listening to the enemy pass. The landing zones are gone. The recon school is closed. The Montagnard allies who tracked beside them were abandoned when America withdrew and faced persecution that many did not survive. But somewhere in those mountains, beneath the canopy that swallowed teams whole and never gave them back, there are still men waiting to be found. 50 names, 50 families, 50 men who walked into the mist on missions their country refused to acknowledge, carrying crossbows and fighting knives and suppressed pistols, the weapons of a war so close and so quiet that the rest of the military barely knew it was happening. They were the ghost soldiers. The NVA called them the green-faced ones. And the jungle they disappeared into has kept their secret longer than any government classification ever could.